Good afternoon. Welcome to the first Public Safety, Transportation, and Environment Committee hearing, Subcommittee hearing for the FY25 or the 2025 legislative session. Today, we will hear from the Office of the Administrative Hearings, the Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund, and the Office of the People's Counsel, in that order. Up first will be the Office of Administrative Hearings, and we can get started. Step up with your team, and our analysts will proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Jacob Polikov for the Department of Legislative Services with the budget analysis for the fiscal 26 allowance for the Office of Administrative Hearings. The Office of Administrative Hearings, just for a little background, was established in 1989 to centralize the hearing functions in various units of state government and provide an unbiased and objective forum for contested cases involving state agencies. It is an independent unit of the executive branch and is also one of the largest central panel agencies in the country. Cases before OAH come from approximately 30 agencies, which reimburse the agency based on the proportion of time that OAH spends on their cases. And additionally, homeowners subject to foreclosure have the ability to request mediation with an OAH mediator. And all OAH decisions are subject to judicial review in state or federal court as provided by law. So for fiscal 2026, the budget increases by $427,456, or 2.2%, to a nice round $20.0 million. Most of that is reimbursable funds. I know that it looks like all reimbursable funds. There is a small amount of special funds in the budget as well. And as we'll see in Exhibit 1 on page 2, the fiscal 26 allowance, which totals $20 million, 86% of that supports 117 regular positions. That second largest category is rent expenses. That's 6%, and it funds OAH's office in Hunt Valley. It's a beautiful office. Contractual services comprise another 4% of the allowance. Those include translation services provided during hearings, along with outside counsel and other legal service providers used for administrative support, both during and in relation to the agency's hearings. As we'll see in Exhibit 2 on page 3, the allowance increases by 2.2% compared to the fiscal 25 working appropriation. The largest increases include funding for personnel, including the effects of the 2025 cost of living adjustment and increments not yet reflected in the agency's budget in that year, along with increases in the agency's share of statewide cost allocations and additional security for facilities and proceedings. There are a couple of significant decreases, including a lower allowance for employee and retiree health insurance, along with a 44.7% decrease in funding for travel. There's also a decrease in contracts for outside counsel and translation services, along with other legal services. And on page 4, we have data regarding personnel. So as I previously mentioned, the allowance includes 117 regular positions. There's also 1/2 of a contractual FTE, 0.5. And as we see in the middle of page 4, the agency's turnover and necessary vacancies, the amount of vacancies needed to meet their turnover percentage goal is 3.67 or 3.14% vacancy. As of the end of November, there were 5 vacant positions, so there were 1.33 above the number necessary for turnover. Now, the Office of Administrative Hearings does note that administrative law judges account for 3 of the 5 vacant positions, and the agency has a practice of filling several of these positions at one time because the training process is incredibly robust and time-consuming. They want to make sure that they're minimizing training expenses, so they recruit and train new ALJs at once to fill multiple vacancies at once. They've indicated that recruitment is underway to fill those positions, and they anticipate new ALJs filling the existing vacancies in March of this year. On page 5, we have our first observation, which talks about the total number of cases heard by the agency decreasing slightly. As I noted, OAH hears cases each year from more than 30 state agencies. And as we see in Exhibit 3 on the lower half of page 5, the 31,730 cases disposed of by OAH in fiscal 2024, 27,292, or 86%, originated in just 3 of those agencies. As in previous years, the Department of Health had the most cases disposed of by OAH, That was 13,207. They're followed by the Department of Transportation's Motor Vehicle Administration, and then the Department of Human Services. Mortgage foreclosure mediations are included in the other category. Those increased by 222 cases in fiscal 24 to a total of 940. That continues a trend that began in fiscal 2022 as those federally instituted foreclosure moratoriums concluded and homeowners returned to mediations. The Maryland State Department of Education cases are also included in the other category. Those have risen for 3 consecutive years after sharply decreasing for 2 years for a year between fiscal 20 to 2021. OAH disposed of 1,237 cases from MSDE in fiscal 24. That's an increase of 137 cases from the prior year and an increase of 520 from the recent low of 717 cases in fiscal 2021. One of the objectives that's identified in OAH's annual Managing for Results submission is for the agency to dispose of all cases in an efficient and timely manner. OAH schedules hearings promptly upon receipt of an appeal for all case types, including MDH hearings and DHS hearings, which have federally imposed time limits of 90 days or 120 days. For other cases, OAH does not have a set timeline in the MFR for what constitutes a timely disposition. In fiscal 2024, however, OAH reported that 99.9% of decisions were issued in a timely manner. That's an increase of 0.1 percentage points compared to fiscal 2023. OAH reported this improvement despite the average number of days from the date of receipt of an appeal to the date of disposition overall increasing by 4.5 days between fiscal 23 and 24. And as we see in Exhibit 4 on the bottom of page 6, the average processing time increased for all of the agencies with cases specifically tracked by OAH except for 2. The agency has cited several factors for this increase, including postponements due to good cause, and that can include medical or family emergencies or requests to obtain counsel. Additionally, there's been an increase identified in multi-party cases and an increased use of motions, including motions to dismiss and motions for summary decision. On page 7, we'll talk about the percentage of cases resolved using alternative dispute resolution techniques. That's gone up recently. Cases brought before OAH are not strictly resolved via hearings. The agency encourages parties in cases to reach a settlement when at all possible, and ALJs, the administrative law judges, are assigned by the agency to utilize alternative dispute resolution or ADR techniques when requested by the parties to assist them in reaching a settlement. ALJs serve one of 2 roles in these cases, either as a settlement judge or a mediator. And the difference is that as a settlement judge, ALJs will assist with settlement discussions, but will also provide the parties with an assessment of the case during that process. As a mediator, the ALJ works to facilitate a discussion aimed at reaching a settlement, but does not provide that assessment of the case to the parties. And as we see in Exhibit 5 on page 7, OAH resolved 37.1% of cases using ADR techniques in fiscal 2024. That's an increase of 9.2 percentage points from the prior year. Despite that improvement, the percentage of cases resolved with ADR techniques in fiscal 24 remains 13.5 percentage points below the 50.6% rate in fiscal 2018, which is the highest percentage in the last decade. Now, OAH does not specifically state how parties are encouraged to participate in the ADR process, nor is there a goal set for the percentage of cases to be resolved with ADR techniques in each year. Given the variation in the percentage of cases resolved with ADR techniques in the past 10 years and the absence of other metrics regarding ADR techniques, such as the percentage of cases from each agency resolved with ADR techniques or other metrics, it's difficult to say how the agency can better employ these techniques. Therefore, OAH should comment on if data is tracked regarding which types of cases ADR techniques are most successful in resolving, and the Department of Legislative Services recommends the adoption of committee narrative requesting additional measures reported by OAH regarding the use of ADR techniques in the annual MFR submission. On page 9, DLS has one recommendation. It's to adopt narrative, as I just mentioned, regarding alternative dispute resolution techniques. That narrative suggests that those be submitted, as I noted, with the fiscal 27 MFR submission. With that, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jacob. Questions from the members? Before I do that, while you all endured and the initial change, there's another change that you may have noticed. although we're going to make sure we have your nameplate here for our newest member. The change in the committee, obviously, I've been honored to be the chair of Public Safety and Transportation and Environment. We have existing members, Senator Rosapep from District 21, existing member, Senator Johnny Salling from District 6. We have an additional member this year, a new member, Senator Karen Lewis-Young from Frederick County, District 3. So we think we have the state covered for us this year. So, Senator Young.
Thank you. I have a question regarding the surplus. I'm a little unclear about what happens to it, although it may not be relevant right now. Does it go back
Senator
to the...
Senator Young,
Yes.
we're going to questions to the panelists when we get to that, but this is for the
okay.
analysts
I'm sorry.
right now. No problem. Any questions to the analysts? Senator Rosebeth.
Yeah, what
Oh,
are
do
the,
you have one?
I have one.
I'm sorry. Do you have one for the analysts as well?
I'm not sure who it goes to.
Okay, he'll advise you.
Okay. So I have a question about the surplus. What happens to it? Does it roll over to the next year? Does it go back to the MVA? Or is it ever reinvested in accident mitigation programs such as education or highway signage?
I just want to make sure that my mic turns on here. I'm not sure what's quite going on there.
You may have to push your mic off. We don't have our technical assistants.
There we go. There we go. Okay. Sorry, Senator. I just want to clarify. You're talking about a budget surplus? That was in your question?
The surplus in the reserve. So there was a lot of language about the surplus, and it was up for a couple of years beyond what is required. It's projected to be down now.
I'm sorry, Senator. Which page are you on?
Excuse me, she might be referring to me. Yeah, I think we got agencies, different agencies. Which one are we looking at? Which agency?
Started with Office of Administrative Hearings.
Oh,
Never mind.
Quite all right.
There are a number of changes today that we're going at the first front. First front will be.
Yeah,
All right,
understand.
Senator Rosebeth.
Been there, done that. MSCA hearings. What are they about?
So those.
Not MSCA, MSD.
Yes, sir.
MSD.
Those hearings can involve special education appeals or others often triggered by parents and guardians of students, and the agency will be able to provide some additional detail, but the ones I'm most familiar with are special education appeals.
Okay, I'll follow up with the agency now. Okay,
Thanks,
thank you.
Senator.
Any further questions for the analysts? All right. Judge, do me a favor, introduce your team as you get started.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Jackson. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. Senators Lewis-Young, Rosa Pepe, and Selling. I am Chief Administrative Law Judge Chung Park of the Office of Administrative Hearings. It has been an honor to serve as a state of Maryland's Chief Administrative Law Judge since July 1, 2020. Also with me today is OAH's Director of Finance and Administration, Senator Harbell. And next to her is the Director of Quality Assurance, Executive Administrative Law Judge, Latonia Dargan. And next to her is Director of Operation, Executive Administrative Law Judge, John Riley. And also we have on the back is Director of IT, Tag Ibrahim, and Deputy Director of Operation, Saida Hamptonell. I would like to thank OAH's legislative analyst, Jacob Polycarp, for his thorough analysis. Jacob has visited OAH's Hunt Valley headquarters on several occasions to meet with me and members of our OAH management team. I appreciate the time that he has taken to learn about our agency and the important work that we do. OAH remains vigilant of its statutorily defined role to provide flexible due process to the citizens of Maryland and continues to work tirelessly to provide fair and impartial hearings in a safe, efficient, and timely manner to the people of Maryland who are affected by the actions of many Maryland state agencies. Accessibility and efficiency of OAH will remain strong as it continues to ensure diligent due process for all Marylanders. OAH concur with the governor's allowance, and committee has OAH's written testimony, and members of my management team are here and happy to answer any questions committee members might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. If you could do me a favor and members of the team, just remember that we have to turn off our microphones. We have a lot of hearings going on today, the first hearings. And so make sure we can get everything heard. Any questions from the members? Senator Young.
Thank you. Apologies, I'm now in reverse. I notice your healthcare costs have gone down quite a bit. I'm just surprised, perplexed. I've never seen that happen before.
There's a forecast from DBM due to some changes in healthcare with retirees for the reduction. So that's a mandated reduction.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Senator Roosevelt.
Yeah, I want to ask a question about the MSDE appeals. What's the breakdown with kinds of cases?
So those are the cases that are delegated to us by the Maryland State Department of Education. So we have a number of different case types, as Mr. Polikoff indicated. The biggest chunk of them are cases that come to us for hearings under the Federal Individuals with Disability in Education Act. So when students are in need of special education support and services. We also get hearings from the Office of Child Care, which regulates and manages family child care homes, daycare centers, and informal child care providers. We also get case types from under the Office of Child Care in connection with the child care subsidy. But probably the biggest chunk of cases that we get from MSDE are the special education cases.
Do you have the statistics with you, or if not, could you get them for us?
Yes, we can get that information for you.
So that's question number one. I'd really like to break down as much as you can. I mean, I'd like to see the percentages. This is a mechanical question. I don't quite know how to ask it. So in the first case, they're parents who are appealing on the special ed issue, right? In the second case, they're child care providers who are appealing for some reason. In the third case, there are parents who've applied for child care subsidies who are applying. That's what I think. Okay.
Correct.
How does anybody know to appeal?
So in the special education context, that's built into the statutory and regulatory framework, both at the federal level and the state level. So when a family member or when families are interacting with the school systems, there are all sorts of procedural due rights that they have to be provided with in writing. And that information about how to request a hearing, to challenge what the school system is doing is included in that procedural information.
So that would come from the school system to the parent.
Correct.
And then that would go to MSD, and then it would go from MSD to you?
So the appeal is typically filed with the school system.
Okay.
And then it gets transmitted to the Office of Administrative Hearings.
So MSD is really not in it. It's just, they're just educational ones, but they come direct. It doesn't go through MSD, or does it go through MSD?
It goes to the school system and comes to us.
No, but it's school system to you, not school system to
MSD,
MSD
correct.
to you. Okay,
correct.
That was that question. Do you have any data, again, broken down by kind of appeal within an area, like of the special ed appeals, 40% of them are this issue and 30% of them are that issue? Same question with the child care providers.
We don't have data as to the issues that's raised in the cases, but we do have data on dispositions of the cases.
Okay, well, whatever data you have, I'd like broken down by vertical? What, the special ed versus this versus that versus the third thing? Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. As we move forward, a couple quick questions, Judge. One, on page 2, you talk about your translation services, and could you just talk about the terms of those contracts that you have? Or just anyone?
So the terms for the translation services, they're from a statewide contract. So the state handles the actual contract, and then OEH piggybacks off of the terms. I don't have the exact terms with me, but it's from a statewide contract.
If you could get that to us.
Will do.
We'd appreciate that. And Judge, my last question, I think, right now is your vacancy rate, and I understand the intricacies of the jobs for the judges, and we like the vacancy rate, by the way. But the training that's necessary to bring folks on board to be prepared, we certainly appreciate that as well. Does that prove to be a challenge for you going forward? Is that a particular challenge for you? Because of the delay.
Our Director of Quality Assurance is responsible for training new judges as well as the judges who are already in place. So she could talk about it.
Thank you.
So can you just clarify your question?
Yes. So it's vital to make sure that we have folks who are prepared to perform their duties. And it's great to see, from my perspective at least, it's great for us to see that you all are ensuring that folks are trained up. When you have vacancies and you need to bring folks on, has this, you can speak to this number here. What type of challenge does that cause you when you have to get your cases heard?
So it doesn't cause that much of a challenge because we bring people in small batches. So the total number of administrative law judges, including the 5 management judges right now, is 56.
Okay.
And so for example, we're hoping to have 3 new ALJs join us, at least 3 in March. So while those 3 people are going through training, the other 50-some ALJs are handling cases. And as they go through their training in each area, they get released in that area, so then they can be added to the pool of ALJs who do the cases in that case type.
So is this a policy that, is this a written policy within your agencies to this process?
It's
Actually, and let me qualify that as well. Again, I think it's terrific to make sure you have folks who are trained up and prepared. Any delay, dealing with such matters is has a negative impact on families and our citizenry. So that policy is something that I would love to see, or we'd love to see a copy of that if you have it, because it's something that maybe some other agencies can kind of learn to use, to put it to use.
Yes, I
Try to say that as delicately as I could.
No, it's fine. It's fine. No, we do have a written summary of the training process and how long it takes and what it looks like, and we can
Yes.
absolutely get that to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just looking at the vacancy above the turnover, and you're at a good place. And we've talked about this many a times that a lot of the agencies need to find out how well you do this. And so I'm glad we're at a place where we can say we're at a good place, but I know a lot of them have a hard time filling their vacancies. And we want to make sure that we keep those good workers in these vacancies. And I just want to commend you on doing that. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Anything else from you, Judge, your team? If not, this will conclude the hearing. Great to see you all. Next up will be Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund, MAIF. Director Redmer, bring your team up. And our budget analyst will proceed. All right, proceed when you're ready.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Today, I'll be presenting the analysis on the Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund, or Maryland Auto. Now, Maryland Auto is an independent, non-budgeted state agency that's organized into two different divisions. The insured division is the automobile insurer of last resort for Maryland residents, while the uninsured division pays claims to residents of Maryland who are involved in accidents in Maryland with motorists who are uninsured, or for hit-and-run incidents in which the responsible party cannot be found. Their operating budget for calendar 2025 increases by $2.7 million, or 7.3%, to $40.3 million. Moving on to page 2, in Exhibit 1. As you can see, the insured division increases by about $2.1 million in calendar 2025, while the uninsured division increases by $600,000. Most of these changes in both divisions is due to increases in employee salaries and fringe benefits for both divisions. Personnel, so agency-wide personnel has changed for the insured division full-time employees by about 2.8 in 2025. Contractual positions for the insured division have decreased slightly, while the uninsured division's full-time employees have remained consistent since 2023. Moving on to page 5, Exhibit 3, you can see that there has been a net loss for the past 3 years. In 2023, the net loss was $14.6 million. In 2024, it's estimated to be about $21 million. And in 2025, it's projected to be about $14 million. Now, going into 2025, there's due to be an assessment where Maryland Auto will collect $22 million. The ending surplus in 2023 was roughly $20 million, while in 2024, it's estimated to be about $900,000. And in 2025, primarily due to the assessment in 2025, the ending surplus is projected to be about $9 million. As you can see in Exhibit 4 on page 7, the insured division surplus is at its lowest point since the late 1980s. In Exhibit 5 on page 8, you can see since 2021, there's been an increase in the number of gross written policies, as well as the number of policies in force. On page 11 in Exhibit 7, you can see rate inadequacy across the state has decreased in 2024. They reached a high in calendar 2022 and decreased slightly in calendar 2023. But they are projected to, estimated to further decrease in 2024. The areas with highest rate inadequacy were the Baltimore metropolitan area, as well as northeastern Maryland. Moving on to page 12, Exhibit 8, you can see the average claim costs since 2020. For bodily injury, the claim costs were about $7,000 in 2020, while in 2024, the bodily injury claims were about $11,000. Property damage increased from about $3,000 in 2020 to about $4,000 in 2024. Moving on to the uninsured division, on page 13 in Exhibit 9, you can see the addition of uninsured motorist fines. This was introduced last year from Chapter 857. In 2024, it brought in about $3 million, and it's projected in 2025 to bring in about $3.1 million. Now, this has a pretty massive impact on the net loss going forward, or I should say net income. In 2023, there was a net loss of $3.2 million, while in 2024, it's estimated to be a net gain of about $800,000, and in 2025, it's projected to be closer to $400,000. The ending surplus in 2023 was negative $1.4 million, while in 2024, it's estimated to be negative about negative $600,000, excuse me. And in 2025, it's projected to be negative $200,000. In Exhibit 10 on page 15, you can see that this is not the first time the uninsured division surplus has been in negative territory. Between 2011 and 2013, there was a period where the surplus was in negative territory. But as you can see in 2024 and 2025, the surplus is estimated and projected to increase, slowly creeping into positive territory. On page 16 in Exhibit 11, you can see the uninsured division's claim activity. And the things to highlight are between 2020 and 2024, there's been a decrease in the number of claims received and an increase in the number of claims settled. And with that, we move on to the recommendation from DLS, and the recommendation is to adopt the following narrative. And that concludes the presentation. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions from the panel or from the senators to our analysts? All right. Mr. Director, you're up.
Right, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. My name is Al Redmer. I'm Executive Director of Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund. To my left is Amy Nell. She's our controller. And behind me are some of our smart folks that are prepared to bail me out. She's smart too. Yeah, she is. Oh, yeah. So behind me is Joe Danahy, our Associate General Counsel. Dennis Carroll, who's a contract attorney, more importantly, he's a former Deputy Insurance Commissioner as well as former General Counsel of IWIF and Chesapeake Employers Health, and Colleen Duvall, who we all work for. First, I want to thank Scott Benson. Scott is a new analyst for us, and we appreciate the fact that he did devote a lot of time to get into the weeds with us a little bit, to learn about the intricacies of Maryland auto. And
the quarterly financials, which we agree with, we're happy to do with. We just asked that the dates be tweaked to be consistent with what was in last year's recommendations. I was asked to comment also on the impact of expected market conditions on policies in 2025. And I'm going to refer to a chart. I should have had a copy for everybody, but when I arrived in May of 2020, we had about 32,000 policies. And I arrived at a time that I thought was the end of the pandemic, and it wasn't. And if you remember back then, the state was closed and people were not driving. And if you're not driving, you're not hitting things. So all around the country, carriers were paying out less in claims than they otherwise would have. They finished 2020 flush with cash in the bank, and Business 101 requires if you've got a lot of cash, you need to deploy it. And the industry did that by lowering premiums, but more importantly, they did it by loosening their underwriting. They were writing risks in 21 and 22 that they would not have written previously to that. And as a result of them liberalizing their underwriting, many of our policyholders migrated into the standard market, and that's good. That's why we're here, just to be a stopgap. But you can see we lost policy count each and every month until we hit the middle of 22. And the reason that changed in 2022, again, the rest of the industry, when the economy opened back up, people started driving again, and we were back into the demolition derby. And as you know, people are driving faster and crazier than they ever have, and carriers around the country lost historic amounts of money. One carrier lost, I think it was $12 or $13 billion in 1 year. So what happened was the industry, again, overreacted. The pendulum always swings no matter what industry you're in. And they reacted by dramatically increasing their pricing, but more importantly for us is they tightened their underwriting. They stopped writing risk. Matter of fact, they stopped advertising. They stopped appointing new agents. They were avoiding writing policies. So those policies had to come to us. So you can see our policy count doubled within about a 2-year period. I apologize for the long-winded narrative, but the moral of the story is, as you listen to earnings calls for these other carriers around the country, it's clear that they have stopped the bleeding and they're beginning to turn the marketing spigot back on again. They're starting to advertise a little more, and we believe they're going to liberalize their underwriting again so that our policyholders will begin migrating back into the standard market. So we expect that our policy count will probably drop about 20% during not 19, I'm not an old guy, I'm a 2025. Regarding the surplus, Scott gave the numbers that we were anticipating, a $21 million assessment. Obviously, those budget projections began back in August. As we close the books on November and move into December, we believe that the assessment is going to be less than that. Probably less than $20 million is our expectation. And then the following year, we think that surplus assessment will probably be around $15 million. Next, talk about our progress in getting our rates more adequate than they were. Again, going back to the pandemic, when our economy was in dire straits, the economy was closed, the Insurance Administration sent out a number of bulletins where they requested the industry to provide financial accommodations to policyholders to the extent that we could. Most carriers reduced their rates. We didn't, but we didn't increase our rates either, even though the numbers suggested that we should have. As the economy opened back up, we have consistently taken rate increases over the last couple of years, which has reduced the inadequate rates that we have. So we have a rate increase that's coming into effect the next couple of days. Our rate inadequacy at that point is going to be about 6%. But understanding the mandate from the legislature 40 years ago that we look at affordability in those communities where we have the affordability index, our rates are inadequate by between 20 and 40% because folks just cannot afford to pay high rates in low-income communities that happen to also be in urban communities with high rates. And finally, I'll say that we're going to do another rate increase effective in July, and our objective is to be as adequate as we can around the state, except for those areas where we have the affordability index. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to stop and pause for any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. And look, we appreciate the illustration and the tutelage on what happened during that period of time. That's important for us to know.
Thank you.
And great job managing the recovery. And we'll stay posted on the rate increases. So you're looking at, and then coming up in a week or so, coming up
What's
February, the
What's
initial rate increase.
So we've got a rate increase, is it the 25th? Monday. So our rates are increasing a little over 13% around the state, except for those areas where we have the affordability index. And so again, 40 years ago, the legislature mandated that we look at affordability, recognizing, our role is to provide coverage for folks that can't get it, which is to reduce the number of uninsured drivers around the state.
Gotcha.
So they mandated we look at affordability. The mechanism that we use to do that has evolved over the years, and the mechanism currently is we look at every zip code around the state, we look at the median income, and we strive to keep the premiums for minimum liability only protection, just that. If you buy more coverage, there is no benefit. Minimum limits for liability-only coverage, we strive to keep those rates within 3.3% of that median income. So if you are in an urban area with very high rates and you're in a low-income community, your rates for minimum liability-only coverage is going to be between 20 and 40% less than what other folks are paying.
So that's your first rate increase. The second you mentioned was?
We've got another one. So we had received an order from the MIA, the Insurance Administration, to do a couple of things. They want us to be rate adequate across the board by 2026, which in our view violates the mandate of looking at affordability. They want us to eliminate the affordability index that we use by the end of 2026. Now, they don't like our affordability index. They don't like the mechanism that we use. We told them that we will not abandon affordability, but we will look at alternative mechanisms to get at the same result. And we're doing that research and due diligence, and hopefully we'll be able to find a different mechanism that allows us to look at affordability, but do it in a way that the MIA is comfortable with.
Okay, that was the end of 26?
The end of 26.
Okay, thank you. And that next rate increase is when?
So they also, I'm sorry, I failed to mention, in that order, they required us to have a plan describing how we're going to eliminate the affordability index. And they also mandated that we have another rate increase. We need to file it by May for an effective date in July of this year.
Okay, thank you.
On top of the 13% we just took.
Got you. Appreciate that. Please keep us
We will.
abreast of that.
Thank you.
So it's interesting that, so MIA has asked you to eliminate by the end of 2026.
Yeah.
We got that.
Interesting year, by the way.
Yes, thank you very much. Senator Young.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Certainly,
sure.
the insurance industry is very volatile and unpredictable.
It is.
Now that I'm with the program, I'm going to rephrase my earlier question
Sure.
about the surplus. So it may not be relevant now, but in years where there was a surplus above and beyond the recommended ratio, what happens to that? Does it go back to the MVA? Does it subsidize rates? Does it roll forward to the next year? Is it ever utilized for accident mitigation programs?
So the surplus is merely an accounting number. You know, it's not necessarily dollar. Well, I mean it is, but it's an accounting number. So as an example, I'll give you an example. Our insured division, the surplus, we expect at the end of the year to be $4 million or something like that. Yeah. We have an investment portfolio that at the end of November was $152 million. So it's not like we're running out of money. So the accounting process is, and this is throughout the industry, all insurance carriers, if you look at the accounting, every other public company uses general accounting principles. The insurance industry uses statutory accounting. And briefly, and I'm not a lawyer, but briefly what that means is for other companies, we're worried about information to protect shareholders. In the insurance industry, statutory accounting is designed to protect policyholders. So if an insurance company goes belly up, we need to make sure that there's enough cash to pay all of the future claims on that book of business. So as an example, we have $152 million in an investment portfolio. Our largest liability is for claim reserves, and that's about $80 million. So including some claims we don't even know about. So we have to have a liability, and again, this is an accounting procedure. We have to have an accounting, a liability for claims. So we've got $80 million liability in our financial statement for claims, even though those claims will not be paid for weeks or months or maybe even years. So again, the surplus is an accounting formula. Again, we've got $152 million in assets.
If I could just add briefly, if you're more familiar with like public sector sorts of balance sheets, it's really like a retained earnings equity equivalent. So it's a specific term for insurance companies, but that's essentially what it is.
Okay.
But
helps a lot.
the issues that you spoke about, mitigation and those kinds of things, in the uninsured division, we do a lot, as much as we can, education and outreach regarding different issues in encouraging folks, as an example, to get insurance, to let people know that we're there so that if they can't find insurance, they know where to come.
Thank you.
Senator, anyone else? Senator Roosevelt.
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you, Senator.
Good to see you.
A couple of questions. One is, what is the profile? I got the concept, obviously, of what you're in business for. And I appreciate the briefing a little bit about some of the disagreements with the insurance commissioner. But give me a profile of your customers.
Sure. Yeah, happy to do so. We actually just did a briefing the other day where we have some of that information. And so the typical policyholder that we have is young.
How young? Younger than you and me, but how young?
Under 50.
Yeah, under 50.
Under 50, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, so typically it is 79% are younger than 50. 81% of our folks are in more urban areas, Prince George's County, Montgomery County, Baltimore City, Baltimore County. 87% are single vehicle, so just one vehicle.
We say one vehicle.
Well, it insures one. The policy has one vehicle on it instead of like a family with 2 or 3 cars.
I see. Okay.
The average age of the vehicle is 12 and a half years old. 70% only have liability coverage. They don't have comp and collision. And it's like what's the number? 99%.
Yep. Minimum.
Have minimum limits. The minimum limits allowed by law.
I see.
Or required by law. So the minimum limits,
I see.
30,000 per person, 60,000 per accident, $15,000 in property damage. Really
low,
inadequate, low coverage. When you go home, blow the dust off your policy and look at it. I guarantee you don't have. Now, it's not that they don't recognize, our policyholders don't recognize that they need more coverage. They just can't afford it. A substantial number of our policyholders have English as their second language.
You know what percentage?
We don't know. But we'll try to get you some anecdotal information based on like our claims department having to get translators.
Yeah.
On the phone.
That's a good.
We'll get you some data on that.
That's a good way to look at it. How about in terms of gender?
Mostly male, and I'll ask my smart folks behind me. Do we have that number?
Yes.
Percentage of male, female.
And while you're looking for that, could you go back to the age 50 as being when you classify young drivers?
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
I appreciate that when I was 50, but what I want to say, I'm just asking, how did they qualify as your young drivers or your grouping?
Oh yeah. We just use that to identify it. That's all. So there's no specific.
But you have a breakdown.
Relevance to that.
More
we'll get you. Yeah, we'll get you the breakdown of our age. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Because that we do have.
We were waiting on the question of whether you had the gender.
Pardon me? Yeah, we'll get. Yeah,
Well, you'll get that to us.
Yeah.
That's fine. I got another question along that line. To what extent do people go in and out? To which you have repeat customers?
Our cancellation rate is 52%. So for every 100 policies we get, 52 of them cancel before the end of the year. Now, some of those folks leave to go into the standard market, and that's
Right.
good. That's why
Yeah,
we're
no,
here.
I agree.
We have some folks that will sell their car and just stop driving. But there's a percentage, we don't know what it is, that they'll cancel their policy and they will continue to drive.
Right.
We have, I don't know the number, I'll see if we can find out. We have a number of policyholders, they buy a policy, they run out of money, it cancels, they come back, and we will insure them, 2 or 3 times.
That was really where I was going with it. To what extent do you have frequent flyers who come in and out?
We do, yeah.
But is it like material?
Pardon me?
Is that a material number who come in?
It is. And it's not that it's bad.
No, I
because
understand.
These are folks trying to do the right thing,
No,
but
I
it
understand.
is, from an administrative perspective, it's very costly. And let me provide a shout out to our 200 employees. When I arrived in 2020, I inherited a great team. The team today is even better, I think, than it was then. If you go into our financials, our general and administrative cost is about 10%. I mean, that is a spectacular number. And so our folks are committed to the mission, and they are very efficient in the work that they do.
Can I ask another question, Mr. Chair? Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm learning a lot. So I want to come back to sort of the frequent flyers in the sense of, to the extent they exist, you know who they are. Do you know well, you obviously know what the claims rates are. So what's the profile of your claims broken down by these kinds of
I don't know if we have it broken down by those categories. I'll check and find out, but I can tell you that our claim results are worse than other carriers. See, other carriers, they're not anxious to write business in urban low-income communities because the more urban it is, the more congested it is, and that's where the accidents
it's congestion.
are. You have an increased frequency of fraud in more urban areas, and so carriers, they find their ways to avoid writing business there. The MIA took action against a couple of 2 years ago against a carrier that they alleged discrimination in Baltimore City. The other things they do is they'll skew their rates to make it much more expensive for somebody with credit issues or employment issues, or they're not as educated. We don't even ask about those things. The other thing they'll do is, and this ebbs and flows as the market changes, but if you would have called up 6 months ago to get a quote, they give you an attractive quote and they'll say, okay, we'll give you the policy when you send us a 40% down payment. Well, if they're requiring a 40% down payment,
they're screening people out.
Who is it that they're selecting against? Who is it they're trying to avoid? Also, there's carriers. They'll give you a nice auto policy if you also buy
everything else.
A homeowner's policy.
I understand.
Well, what if you don't own a home? You don't have a homeowner's policy. So once again, what are they? Who are they trying to avoid doing business? So those folks come to us, and you're with lower income individuals, your claim results are going to be poorer. Right. Because you're in an urban area with a lot of congestion, but also, so think about this: if you have a claim, and if you do have comp and collision, and you've got a $1,000 deductible, or say a $500 deductible, and you have a $600 claim, you're going to file a claim, and now you got a claim against you. If you are of more substantial income and you've got some money in the bank, you're going to eat that, and you're not going to file a claim. So the system itself disadvantages low and moderate income individuals.
And I will say this before Senator Roosevelt goes again. I'm glad we have the People's Council in the back to hear this.
Good point. Yeah, good point. A very good point. So it's basically liability insurance that you're selling.
That's most of what we have.
Right. And so the implication of that is that the claims are related, it's the fault of your customer.
Well,
Am I
so
saying that right?
for us, yes. For the industry, no. I mean, you know, most carriers, if you are hit by somebody else and you're not at fault, other carriers may ding you.
Right.
We don't.
I understand, but where I'm going with this is, it sounds to me like you have a special population that you know about that are at fault. Let me pursue that. No, that's good news, not bad news, is where I'm going with this. Is you made reference earlier to the fact that COVID and post-COVID, driving is not all it could be. Do you, or does the insurance administration, or do the other carriers, is anybody doing anything in a systemic way since COVID to try to identify who the problem children are and help them beat less problems?
So, you know, we try to provide, you know, education to the extent we can. But, you know, we do very little work directly with the policyholder. All of our business is through independent producers. So they have the day-to-day contact. Now, if you go to our website, we do have information. A lot of it happens to be geared to our commercial policyholders, and we don't have a lot of them, but you know, we have, you know, commercial policyholders where, you know, they've got a driver who has had 3 or 4 claims in a year for doing the same stupid stuff, and when you talk to the owner of the business, it's like, well, I can't find anybody else to drive the truck.
Gotcha, I understand.
So it's just you know, a tough situation that folks find
Well,
themselves in.
I got a comment, then I'm going to shut up, Mr. Chairman. Free advice, I'll try to bring it up with the insurance commissioner when the insurance commissioner comes up. It seems to me that somebody, not necessarily you, but someone in this world ought to have some proactive strategy to identify the folks, exactly what you just said, 4 times, 3 times, 1 time, whatever. When you identify a relatively small number of people who are creating the majority of the problem, that makes interventions much more efficient. And I'm not sure anybody does that, but I'd love to know if somebody does that. If somebody isn't doing that, I'd love to figure out a way we could help somebody do it.
Yep.
Thank you.
I do have, our policyholders are 41% female and 59% male.
Absolutely. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the information, and it's important that we know the stats. But I have one question about the uninsured and those that are, to me at times, it's been the problem with those that are insured, as we know. Recently, there's been uptake on electrical bicycles and those who are riding bikes that are in roads, riding on the roads, and there's incidents and accidents. Just to let you know what happened to me. I have a bill that I'm doing, just to let you know.
Good,
okay?
good.
The electrical bicycle lost control and hit my vehicle, and I had $9,000 worth of damage, which a 42-year-old that had no insurance, no license, nothing at all, okay, and walked away, and the uninsured paid everything, and I had my also part that I paid.
Yep.
And I'm sure my premiums are going to go up.
So that's a great point, and that is a great reason to point out why we exist and the importance of affordability as a component of our rate making. In your example, if we're hit by somebody that's uninsured, our insurance company pays for it. And if you go home and you look at your insurance policy, we all pay a certain amount of money for uninsured motorist coverage to protect us in the event that that happens.
And I see that, sir. I saw that.
If you look at areas that, you know, there are residual markets like us in every state. Some look at affordability like we do, some don't. For those that don't, DC is an example. They don't look at affordability. Their rates for uninsured motorist coverage is approximately double what we pay. And the reason for that differential is the fact that we help folks get insurance that can't afford it otherwise, and not every jurisdiction does that.
And the reason why I say this is that I don't know if something like that has ever been assessed of those types of accidents, which I think maybe that's something we could have in place, just to see those types of accidents and the outcome that could happen to other people.
You talk about the electric bike?
For electrical bikes or anything of that
We'll
necessary.
see if we have any data on that.
And it would be beneficial, but at the same time, I would say that maybe those that are 21 years and older, that they depend upon something like that, that maybe they should be a type of a dependency, or not to say dependency, but to say accountability, that they do have insurance, and maybe just a license. You know, nothing more than that.
Right.
That at least there's something of a reserve, you know, because there's nothing there now.
Right.
And if it could happen to you or anybody in this room or a family member, that somebody that's uninsured, riding something like this, hitting you head on, and then, you know who's accountable for that. So it's just a situation that happened to me that I don't. And I had the hearing already, but I just want you and everybody to know that it happened to me, it could happen to anybody, and I don't want this to happen to anybody.
Right.
And again, it all falls back on me, but it fall back on the state at the same time, so I appreciate that.
Yep. My smart people updated me. We have 20% of our policyholders are under 30, 52% are under 40. And again, most have had financial challenges, which is why they come to us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sink, I almost got that.
Wait, he was to see how many questions I can't answer.
I'm sorry, you're doing such a great job.
That's that old colleague thing that's going on, but go ahead, Senator.
I meant to ask about the installment plan.
Yes.
Because the installment thing seems very much related to affordability. Sure. And obviously, you were at 2%, and now you're at 18%. It would seem to me, just commonsensically, that you'd be more affordable on average with more people paying by installments.
So
Or am I missing something?
Yeah, no, so prior to a couple of years ago, we had significant restrictions.
Right, I
in
know,
the
we changed
installment
that.
billing, and the legislature loosened the flexibility on that. So we require a down payment of 17%.
Right.
And the reason that it was 17%, when we get the down payment, we need to make sure that there's enough equity in the policy to get us until the next payment is made, if that makes sense.
That makes sense, yeah.
There is still a robust premium finance market out there, and some of those carriers will accept, the premium finance companies will accept as little as a 10% down payment.
Oh, but your down payment is higher.
Correct. So there are still some people that will go there because of the lower.
Do we know what percentage of people do installment either from the private market or from you?
We do, yeah.
Could you tell us?
Yeah.
Yep, it would be about 19% of our policyholders are selecting our installment billing plan. About 2% of policyholders pay in full, and then the remainder
So
is
most of them
all
are finance?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know, do either the private plans, or do you allow for, I don't know I forget what the term of art is. I was going to say direct deposit, but it's a reverse. It's direct payment where they authorize their bank to pay every month?
Most of our payments come in via credit or debit card. We do have an option where they can pay us via an ACH payment in our system.
But I mean, when you say debit or credit card, it's automatic, or they have to make the decision every month?
They can set up a recurring payment, yes.
To what extent do folks do recurring payments?
I don't know exactly what percent, but it's not insignificant. I know a large percentage of our calls that come in to make payments, we offer them if they would like to set up a recurring billing, and a lot of them, if they can or they're comfortable with it.
Gotcha.
It's probably under 50%, but I can find out more
Okay,
specifics.
no, that's great, thank you. That was it, Mr. Chairman.
I'm done.
Thank you. That's important questions. So I want to thank you.
All right, thank you,
Mr. Director.
Chairman,
Thank you,
members
and
of
thank
the
you, team.
committee. We appreciate
Great
it.
information. Any other information you'd like to share with us, please get it to us.
We will, thank you.
And Happy New Year, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up, we will have our People's Council. All right, next up, People's Council, come on up, and our analysts will get us started. Thank you for your patience. Great to see you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Suveksha Bujel, and I will be presenting the budget analysis for the Office of People's Council. OPC represents the interest of residential utility consumers before the Public Service Commission, federal regulatory agencies, and the courts. OPC is funded through special funds derived from an assessment on public service company revenues. The operating budget for fiscal 2026 increases by about 35,000 or 0.4% to a total of 8.3 million. Exhibit 1 on page 2 shows the overview of agency spending. 4.4 million or 53% of the budget is directed for personal expenses. The second largest chunk, which is about 3.3 million or 40% of the budget, is for outside legal services support. Exhibit 2 on page 3 is the proposed budget chart. As I mentioned earlier, the budget increases by about 35,000. The majority of the cost is for personal expenses, which is for the cost of living adjustment and other associated fringe benefits. We have personal data on page 4. The number of authorized positions for OPC is 27 in fiscal 26, which is unchanged from last year. Of the 27 positions, 2 are vacant as of December 2024. Moving on to key observations on page 5, we have a discussion about the growth in OPC workload. As shown in Exhibit 3 on page 6, OPC case participation has reached its highest point in recent years in fiscal 2024 at 288 cases, which is an increase of 53 cases or 22.6%. Of this total cases, 137 favorable decisions were issued. Overall, the workload of OPC has increased in recent years, reflective of its growing case participation rate and also due to the increase in complexities of the proceedings in which it is involved. In response to this increase in workload, Supplemental Budget 2 of fiscal 25 authorized 5 new positions. Although 4 of the 5 positions have been filled, OPC reports that a significant volume of training and mentoring is required before they can experience decrease in their workload. OPC anticipates this reduction to take place over the next 6 months as the new hire gain more experience. Exhibit 4 on page 8 shows the number of calls to OPC for assistance. This has increased in fiscal 26 to 1,937, which is about 41.2% increase. And this is the highest number of calls since at least 2009. According to OPC, the increase in number of calls is primarily due to inquiries related to reduction in energy benefits that is provided by the Department of Human Services and also increase in utility rates. On page 9, we have the operating budget recommended actions. DLS recommends concurring with the governor. And that is all I have, and I'll take any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. And from our panel, any questions for our analysts? No questions. Thank you very much for your report. You're on. Please acknowledge yourself as well as your the other person that's here with you. And I'm missing something. Hold on 1 second. All right. Good.
Okay, good afternoon, Chair Jackson, Senator Salling, Senator Rosa Pepp, and Senator Lewis Young. Pleasure to be here today. David Lapp, Maryland People's Council. I'm here with Carissa Robuski, who's our Chief Operating Officer, and knows the budget, somewhat better than I do. We appreciate Sylvestra's analysis and report, and she's new, and we appreciate her digging in, and we think she did a nice job. I'll be brief, and we'll be happy to answer questions that you have. As the report you just heard, our caseload has just been increasing significantly in recent years, and also our other responsibilities, that come from legislation on energy all the time. It's just in the last year from the previous fiscal year, an increase of 23%. And our cases are getting more and more complex all the time. We have, some of the legislation. We had SB 1, which was the retail supply bill last year. That's added a lot of work, but there are also additional pieces of legislation, and each one means the Public Service Commission initiates proceedings, rulemakings, and we play, a very important role in all those in terms of advocating for residential utility customers. We also do an extensive amount of work at PJM, the regional operator of the transmission grid and the energy and capacity markets, and also its regulator, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Just since October alone, we have been engaged very actively in 7 new FERC dockets related to the capacity market auction last summer, which you may have heard about, that is going to add to utility customer bills starting this June. We have continued to litigate a lot of rate cases. We've been sort of inundated with rate cases the last couple years. Some of those are complete. Some of them are still ongoing, and of course we have new ones as well. We do some reports that try and provide information to the public about what's going on with utilities and utility rates. We produced a report last summer. It's a June report from last summer, which really just documented facts about how rates have changed over the years. And they've gone up significantly for many, not all, but for many of the utilities. For BGE customers, BGE's gas rates have increased since 2020 by about 50%. And I'm talking about the delivery distribution rates. Those are the rates that we litigate in rate cases, and those are the rates that generate profits for utility investors. That's the for gas, it's the pipes, that sort of thing. Yes.
What's that percentage again? Sorry to interrupt you. What was that percentage again?
That percentage was 50%. Yes, and that's BG gas. For electric, it's 30% since 2020. So those are significant increases in the delivery portion of a customer's bill. If you look at your customer bill, you'll see there's a distribution charge, which is the delivery. That's the pipes and wires and that sort of thing, but also other infrastructure that supports that. Computers and trucks and whatever that infrastructure is. Those are capital expenditures. That's what primarily goes into the distribution rates. There's operational costs as well. Those are expensed. They don't contribute to utility profits. They recover those on a dollar for dollar basis. The other part of your bill is the commodity cost, which is the supply cost. And that's a separate portion of the bill that is more or less a pass-through from the commodity market. So that rates report, is out there, and we're happy to share that. But it really shows there's some incredible looking graphs showing how rates have increased over time. We have a consumer assistance unit that takes calls, as you heard, and we're seeing huge volumes of calls. Our numbers have gone up significantly last year, and for the first couple months this year, we've already, first two weeks of this year, we hit, I think, above our monthly average just in 2 weeks. And that's because if you all are looking, if you're BGE customers in particular, you're looking at, some pretty substantial bills right now. 2023, we're in 2025, but in 2023, we think largely as a result of these growing rates, we saw BGE customers, BGE terminated, close the accounts. Some of them get reopened, but for 80,000 customers, which is, significantly higher than, sort of the average over, previous years. Large numbers of terminations, and, all that a lot of that comes back to us. And so we're seeing, increasing workload at our consumer assistance unit. We did get new PINs last year, for which we're very, very grateful. And we've got really great staff, I should say. We have people who are really motivated and passionate about our work and smart, and we're attracting good people. Hopefully that'll continue to happen. But we owe a lot. I'm very grateful to the hard work of our staff, which is primarily we operate as a law firm, but we have the consumer assistance unit as well. I think that's all I have prepared to say, but I'm of course happy to answer questions.
All right, thank you very much for that. I have questions, but I'll allow the team to go first. Senator Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I see that because of your increasing workload, your fiscal 25 budget received a significant increase, but you're pretty flat for 26. Now, during that period of time, we have something called the Piedmont Reliability Project, and that has opened up a whole new can of worms and just heightened the citizen level of concern about how increased infrastructure to meet our energy demands will affect ratepayer payments. Have you anticipated all of that in your fiscal year 26 budget? Because I'm sure your office will be very affected by that.
Absolutely, and to be clear, we already have been, and well before the Piedmont Reliability Project became known to a lot of people in Maryland, we actually engaged in, we challenged, PJM's cost allocation at PJM. We are a member of PJM. We have relatively little influence there, but we are a member and we are very engaged at PJM. They have more than 400 meetings a year, so we do what we can. But we pushed back on the cost allocation of what's called Window 3, which is the $5.5 billion in transmission investments, of which Piedmont is one part of that package. We thought that there should have been a different sort of cost allocation in what PJM used for that, and we pushed back at PJM, and then they did what they did, and they filed at FERC, and we filed a protest at FERC, essentially saying, these projects are being primarily driven by data centers, primarily in Northern Virginia. Unfortunately, we did not succeed in that, but the point is that we've been already very involved, and we've gotten a lot of calls and requests. So to get to your question, we do anticipate that's going to be a workload. We do have the new PINs that we've had several numerous hires in the last 6 months, and we're there a number of very impressive individuals. Our work is complicated, and so it takes time for folks to get up to speed. And as they get up to speed, we think right now we're thinking we can manage that workload. Of course, if we'll see where we are, and we can always we can work with DBM if we need additional help. But right now we're hoping we're prepared for that. Of course, we are always sort of outgunned, by big companies, utilities, or generation companies at PJM. But we're
Ready.
we hope we're ready. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Senator Roosevelt.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks for all the work you guys do. Two things unrelated to each other. One is, could you get us I'll call a legislator level summary of the arguments around this PJM rate increase stuff. Because everybody's heard about it, 24% coming. And I certainly don't, and I think a lot of our colleagues don't really understand how this happened. And so if you could do kind of a two-pager or something like that, not the filing, but kind of what the big picture is and what your arguments were, why you thought what happened was wrong, that'd be very helpful.
Yeah, we did, just so you know, we do, we have a report. We put out a report very soon after the capacity market auction because we essentially saw this coming.
Yeah.
With the Brandon Shores and Wagner plant retirements. And we actually, had much of that report complete even before the auction was run. The fundamental problem there, there's many of them, but the PJM capacity market in a nutshell is just a bunch of rules that are created. It's a contrived market.
Right.
And right now, even PJM reluctantly over the course of the fall, as people got more and more upset, they filed to change a number of those rules. We don't think they go far enough.
Okay.
And some of them are actually adopting some of the, general requests that we and positions that we were taking, months before that.
If we just get a piece of paper that kind of summarizes, so we understand when I get constituent, why is this happening and why shouldn't it be happening? That's kind of what I want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's number one. Number two, different subject, and that relates to insurance. Did you do insurance as well, don't you, or not? Is that separate? People's Counsel?
We don't do. I learned a lot about the uninsured.
Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. We have a separate insurance People's Counsel. Is that correct?
I think yes.
Yes, there's.
I was literally joking with them about, so as we read your reports each year, I was literally joking. It's like the People's Counsel may want to think about being the People's Counsel in another realm. So I was joking about that. So.
No, it's a serious question. I'm embarrassed that I don't know. I mean, do we have an insurance People's Counsel or not? DLS know?
There.
Or do you know?
I don't think there is an equivalent office to ours. The AG's office may be involved.
Okay. Could the staff just check that out? The reason I raise, and this is really more for my colleagues and the staff than anybody else, is there's this little thing going on called climate change, and it seems to be affecting insurance rates. And so I'm curious as to who is there advocating for the insurance policyholders. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Sure.
You don't have to solve every problem.
It's a great question. Before we move forward, I want to qualify something I said earlier. Not only did I mention it, but we're glad you were in the back of the room because we were getting all that information from MAIF. But I also want to congratulate you guys on having a program. So I mentioned when the administrative hearing judge was up, and he talked about their onboarding of their judges and the process that they take to bring them on, a meticulous process to make sure that when they're on board, they are ready to go. As I read your report, you do the same. So I wasn't referring to you when I said other folks could use, or we could use that information for other agencies coming before us. But I want to congratulate you on that and great foresight on that. And I'll come back to my questions in a second. Senator Song.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for the information that you give us. Of course, a lot of the current concerns in the state is what's going on, of course, what we've been talking about with Piedmont. I just wanted to make sure that the Office of the People's Counsel are never out of the loop of a part of what's going on here, but with the Public Service Commission. It seems like, at times you're part of the conversation, but you don't have enough teeth to do more or to be a part more of the conversation and also at the same time decision-making. And not being a part of that is concerning. Being a part and working together and knowing that through the customers of electricity, natural gas, telecommunications, and private water services is important to you, important to the Public Service Commission, but important to us and our constituents. And having those concerns and conversations now and what's going on, we want to make sure for the best interests of the state of Maryland that what's going on right now is for the best interests of the constituents in the service of Maryland, because it's not right at the moment. And so our concerns is if you're out of the loop in any way, And if there's something I'm sure our chairman, that we could do, and I'm sure we would like for us to have the opportunity to give you more teeth, that you can have more of an opportunity to be a part of more of the conversation, that you can say that you're not just a part of the People's Choice, but at the same time, you're there for the people, just as the Public Service Commission, which we've talked about when we have the opportunity to meet with them as well. We have a lot of questions as well. But we want to be an assist and a help to you if we can. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And for the members, I'll say this. We were in committee. You know, we're in a fiscal challenge right now. So we're having multiple fiscal briefings. But while we were in fiscal briefing, I missed my meeting with you. We weren't able to have the meeting with you and your team. And so for the members, you know, our People's Council did leave a document, Maryland's Utility Rates and Charges report, that report that you talked about. So that is available. And if your office hasn't had it, we'll make sure we share that. So a couple of things from my end. One, so if you look at the geographic makeup of our team, I think it's strategically placed here with the members of our you know, committee. We have Western Maryland, we have Central Maryland, we have Southern Maryland, and Central Southern Maryland. So I think it's vital for, and I said for a number of reasons. You talked about data centers. Obviously, they're looking at them out in Western Maryland and in Southern Maryland as well. The area that I represent, you know, part of the counties that I represent, one of them has the only nuclear reactors in the state. And so we sort of get those updates a little bit, not enough, from PJM on matters that are related to the energy challenges that we have and what we're going to come upon soon. I'm on the SMECO side of life down there. You mentioned BGE. I'm not sure if you have the information or if you can help direct us to find information on the other providers for these rate increases that are going on. But most importantly, the termination. You said
80,000
80,000
in 2023.
2023, right. And so if you could help us to find that information on the other carriers, that'd be great for our constituency. Although I live in SMECO region, you know, other members of my area are in BG&E and others. So that's one. Two, you talked about your incredible staff and your team, and you know, the quality of people that you need to do the job that you do. So talk quickly or briefly about your partnership. How do you find folks? How do you advertise for your office to get, you know, the team in there? You know, obviously your lawyers as well, but also those folks who are your consumer assistance folks. How are you recruiting those folks? In my day job, or I work for the Office of Homeland Security in Prince George's. We have the 911 center, but also in our county, not every county has it, we have the 311 folks, and in some cases you have the 211 folks. And so the recruiting for those positions is, recruiting is one thing, but retention is another, right? And so talk a little bit about your recruiting and your retention of your employees and the folks who work with you.
Yeah, I'll touch on this, and maybe I'll turn it over to Carissa, because she's been instrumental in some of our recruitment work. I think we're attracting people because, in part, because, you know, we have you know, a mission, and it's just to, you know, advance the interest of regular people, residential utility customers, and I think, you know, we've gained awareness of that, and so we're attracting people who are interested in that work specifically, I think, and that, so that they have some motivation, which also helps them. You know, if we can give them challenging work, you know, the concern is always the workload, and, you know, the fact that, you know, our salaries are state salaries, and so we do our best to try and, you know, make it manageable, and and challenging and help. We have a lot of younger lawyers, and we are able to give them opportunities to really advance legal skills quickly. And, they can get before the Public Service Commission and make arguments. And we have a lot of different types of legal work. We litigate cases, we put on experts, and, the testimony and evidence that we put on, like in a rate case or in other proceedings, really matters, because, the commission will rely on our stuff, in part in their ultimate decisions. And, without that, then, without that counter, then there wouldn't be anything to, say, hey, that cost is too high, or you don't need to make that investment today. You can make it the next year because, by, piling on, you're increasing rates.
Yeah. And so let me say with that, let me say this. We like to say, sometimes we act on it, sometimes we don't, that we want to be your partner in your mission and what you do, because it doesn't impact our constituency. If you would have us, please share any communication information you have, not just from a case, but, to let folks know what you do. A lot of folks have no idea where to turn, and we're going to have a bunch of them with this weather that we're having now. And so we would certainly like to help you out in that regard, as well as help our constituents out. So I appreciate it. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I would have forgotten that thought. I meant to say that early on.
Yeah, no problem. I don't know, Carissa, do you want to add anything about our recruitment?
Yeah, I think in terms of the Consumer Assistance Unit, we haven't had turnover in that unit, and I do think it's because they're very passionate about what they do, and it's hard work. It's emotional work to get calls all day that are people in crisis, and they are really dedicated to their work. So we've been really fortunate. It's a small but mighty team. In terms of attorneys, I would just say that we don't just put the posting on the DBM website and kind of hope for the best. We have a pretty grassroots effort. We notify 20 different law schools with all of their different alumni programs. We email every bar association, I think, in Maryland, different energy bar associations, listservs for people specifically interested in public service work. So we do a pretty concerted grassroots effort whenever we have a posting, and we've been very successful. But I do think the reputation of the office has really helped increase the caliber of candidates as well.
Nice. Very good. Very good. Last thing for me is this. So I live in southern Prince George's County, and we're in a community east of 301, as you go down. So everything is well and septic on the left. And what happens is you have some residents that have been there for generations who may have oil service, right? So there's oil delivery. Then you have some that are more modern time. We are 25 years down where we are, and we're well in septic, and we're on propane gas. There has been occasions where individuals would have to actually correct their service provider on bringing out refilling of tanks or what have you, unscheduled. And where, I think about it now, I didn't take it well when we're at home, vehicles in the yard, and here comes a truck, pulls up and pulls out his hose and is about to go around back and give me some more propane without even knocking on the door. And so I know it was probably a run in that community or in that area, and here you are going around filling up folks' tank, regardless of whether they want it or not, or could afford it or not. So is there any regulatory regulation out there regarding that matter? Now, I immediately got on the phone and had a conversation with the propane gas company. It's like, look, I've been a customer for a long time, but we have always been delivery upon requests, right? And so here's someone going through the neighborhood, and they're just going to all these customers. They have the list, and they're pulling up. Had we not been home that day, they would have filled my tank, whether I needed it filled or not. And here I would have had something either hanging on my door or some bill coming. So I know I'm not the only person that's gone through that. And again, you have some homes that so you have the oil companies that are doing it or that are delivering, as well as the gas company folks. So.
This is a challenging area because the commission has decided in the past, not recently, that the market for propane and oil, I believe oil as well, is effectively a competitive market. Whether competition really exists or not, I think is a question, and we've dug into it. It could be different in different parts of Maryland, whether, a customer can say, I'm unhappy with this company, this propane company, so I'm going to choose another one that, isn't going to show up and fill my tank when I don't want them to. We would be interested in hearing from consumers especially if they don't think there is a competitive option, because the theory behind utility regulation is that it's a monopoly. BG is the only one who's going to provide gas service in its service territory as well as electric, and so their rates are regulated. If in theory, if there are multiple propane companies that can serve customers, in theory, that competition should help address those issues. And so there's a commission ruling that we're sort of stuck with. And if but we could ask the commission to reconsider that if the facts show that, competition is not effective. And we've looked at that, and in it's been a couple years. There was an area where we were looking at that question, and we didn't think that we could make that case in that situation, but it's certainly something that we can look at.
Hey, look, my concern, and I definitely appreciate that. The concern is a legitimate concern because it was the principle of the matter, and versus a cost challenge. But when you live in areas like that, where you are in the rural tier or whatever the terminology is, you're on heat pumps, right?
Yeah.
So electricity is rolling, and you may have propane in your house, you may have gas fireplaces or stoves or whatever, but your HVAC is heat pumps. And so these are going to be challenging times for folks with these utility bills, and to have companies that can come around and just load your oil tank up or load your propane tank up and just do it, and then here you are stuck with another matter. So just some food for thought, and if you could give us some thought, and kind of we would love to circulate that information to folks on Nextdoor or wherever else, because it's a challenge for some folks. So.
Certainly, there's a few other options. Complaints can be filed, and
yes,
I mean if they're violating the terms of a contract, of course that's it might not be something that the PSC would necessarily handle, but there's other potential legal recourse for sure.
Yeah, no,
we can.
I definitely appreciate that, because it just hit me. I'm like, man, it's freezing out here.
Yeah.
And I remember, and it was in the middle of summer, but I just remember that. And you're thinking about families as you're going by their houses and you see the smokestacks or whatever, and you're saying, man, some folks are going to be, all of us are going to have some crazy bills. But hopefully, as you pass a gas truck or an oil truck, hopefully they've been scheduled to go by to fill up these tanks versus the others. So that was it.
Yeah, very modern heat pumps too. If people have older heat pumps and they're due for replacement, they can, the newer ones are sort of a whole different sort of technology. Absolutely. And much, really efficient, and, could help maybe address some of those higher costs. But they're definitely hitting folks hard. We're getting calls from electric, customers as well. Yeah. Delmarva Power's rates I think they're the highest of any large utility in the state. And there are a lot of customers that are, heating their homes with electricity.
Yeah. All right. Oh, one more.
Well, I got a question for you. I was following that conversation. I thought I understood it, but then somehow I didn't understand it. So the situation, you started talking about competition, but I didn't understand. The case you were describing was someone, the company filled up the propane tank without permission of the customer?
They were actually attempting to fill up my tank.
Yeah, no, I was trying to generalize it.
Without permit, no, that's fine. But that company had recently bought the original company.
Right.
And so it's a larger company. And so they had a lot of customers, that I guess they were, they pretty much had the market just in that general area. But so I guess they had some scheduled deliveries, and they said, we got other folks on the list, and let's just go ahead and fill their tank up.
And there's a question, because I don't have propane. So how do you get billed for it? Or when do you get billed for it?
You get billed, online, or they hang it on your door.
But they fill it up and then they bill you?
Yes.
I never heard of such a thing. That's like people are forcing me to buy cupcakes. They deliver the cupcake and then they say, go online and pay for the cupcake.
Yeah, I mean, and
That's
so,
outrageous.
so you get delivery because we don't have natural gas. And
Yeah, I
so,
understand.
Yeah, in those areas.
Wow.
And so, and it's typically, for me, speaking of me, it's scheduled. So I call and say, hey, my tank is getting low or whatever. So,
I got you. Okay, I'd call your state senator.
oh no, I took care of my issue. So thank you very much. Always great to have you all.
Thank you.
And if there's anything that you need from us, please reach out. And again, thanks for dropping off the documentation. Sorry we didn't get a chance to sit down. We will. This concludes the hearing. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thanks.